So you want to know how to adjust your headset, whether it's threaded or unthreaded? Well, you're about to find out. Let's get on topic. Hey everybody, it's Thomas with Get Out Arizona, and you are watching another great episode of Toolbox Topic once again. I'm joined by my host, Brandon Van Leeuwen. Brandon, how the hell are you?
Doing all right.
Doing all right?
Yeah, a little chilly.
A little chilly this morning. Of course, he's wearing shorts. Now, he did take off his hoodie. He did have a hoodie on and everything, so he didn't just show up without a jacket.
Sort of prepared.
You see that kid at school all the time that shows up in shorts and a t-shirt no matter what time of year it is? That's this guy right here, so.
Too dumb to come in from the rain, I always say.
It happens. So, once again, we're at Check Bicycle Stores in West Phoenix in Goodyear, Arizona, where the cool kids hang out, and me. And as I alluded to in the intro, we are going to learn how to adjust headsets, whether they be threaded or unthreaded. And as you can see, we have an old school Trek 8000.
That is threaded.
This is threaded. This bike's name is Amanda, and I will tell you more about this in a later video. This is going to be a fun project for Brandon and I. And then we have Marlin 5, which is going to have what we refer to as a modern, unthreaded headset and show the adjustments.
Yeah, we're not really going to see threaded headsets very much anymore.
No.
We might see them on some cruisers and some leisure bikes.
Yeah.
These days at a much lower price point, shall we say. It's really almost a dead technology.
Yeah.
So, but there's still enough of them out there. There's still enough cool Treks and Specialized and Giants out there that maybe somebody wants to know.
Yep.
If they're redoing their bike, doing kind of what you're doing here with this project bike, how to see, well, first of all, we're going to see what's going on inside there.
Yes.
And then how to adjust it.
Yes, absolutely. So, and B-roll will be shot today, courtesy of the iPhone once again, and small rig cages because, you know, well, the second camera. So, you know, because I'm too lazy to actually set up the third camera, or the other Sony. So.
All right.
All right, well, let's get into it, Brandon. What are we doing here?
Let's do it. So first off, I'm going to disassemble. It's nice that we've already had it kind of, there's no brake hookup. I took the wheel off already so that we can just get into the headset, kind of the nitty gritty, show you exactly what's going on inside there first. Then we're going to put it back together. Okay. And then we'll show you how to adjust it. So
sweet.
It's time to hit that second camera, I think.
All right, yeah. All right, hold on. Got to get Brandon to do the friggin' clap in transition and everything because you know how he loves to do that. Put my glasses on. All right, Brandon, shock us with one. All right.
So every threaded headset is going to come with a coil stem. So these stems, again, you're not going to see these very often anymore. They do exist, but not in the quantities that we saw in the 80s. I mean, this was the only thing we had back then in the 80s and 90s. So let's see what's going on here. So it's just going to require the loosening of the top nut on a coil stem, and you'll see when I remove this that what's happening is I have a wedge, and right now the wedge would be well, at its loose state, I guess. Right. And then as you tighten that nut, you can see how the wedge creates, well, I don't know what's the word, expansion, shall we say? Inside
it
the steer
expands
tube.
to cause tension within the head tube.
And then that's how it stays in there.
Right.
And then we're left with our threaded headset. Let's take this guy apart. I'm going to let this dangle just nice and gently for the moment.
Right.
And so we're going to need a couple tools for this. You are able to use an adjustable wrench for the top nut.
That's called a crescent wrench, ladies and gentlemen.
But I have, what? But it's adjustable. Fuck it. So anyways, I have this right tool right here. This is the Park tool. That's for the lock nut on the top. And then I have a headset tool as well. So this is kind of essential because if you'll notice here in a second, the threaded erase is a very, very thin.
Yes, thin profile
nut here that I'm going to use in a moment. So if I use this, I've already loosened it up to make things easier on myself so I don't start sweating and look dumb. So we'll kind of just bust into the anatomy of this guy real quick. So if I remove the top nut, my next item is going to be the washer. And then I have my threaded race. The threaded race is what puts actually pressure on the bearings, and then when we do our adjustment, you'll see how this comes into play. Oh, I got two washers in there. That's cool. And then we're going to expose our bearing inside there. Now, these older bikes all had cups that were pressed into the frame. 3 washers, all right. So this was always a freaking baffling thing to me when I was growing up, because you had to cut these steer tubes exactly right, otherwise you had to mess with
Spacers,
all these
yeah.
spacers and stuff there. So it was one of those things. Even today, when you cut a steer tube, it's a fairly nerve-wracking thing to do, because you take too much off, it's not coming back on. So sometimes I understand you leave a little more space and you adjust with spacers. That way, you can't really do an epic fail and screw up an entire fork. So check it out. So I have the bearings next, and then there's the race inside there, which is pressed into the frame. Now your newer ones, and the bottom cup as well, pressed into the frame, and there you see the bearing and the seal. Hopefully you can see that okay.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to remove it completely.
No, that would be a nightmare.
At some point, we're going to go through here and totally re-grease these bearings, clean out the races, and put it all back together again. But that's for another time and another show.
The O-rings pinched.
Thank you. Is it in there?
Looks like it.
Looks good.
Okay.
So one way that you would know that the headset needs to be tightened or adjusted is you can feel play, you can hear play while you're riding. A great thing to do is to, I think we've done this before for like our pre-flight, hold on to that left lever, provided you live in America, the front brake, shall we say,
right.
And then you can move that bike back and forth a little bit and feel if there's any play in the headset. Another thing to do when we talk about our non-threaded headsets in a moment is just to see if there's play inside the spacers. You can't do that with the spacer trick on the threaded, because mostly all our spacers have a little notch in them, and that notch will coincide with a notch also on our steer tube, so these don't spin around at all. So let's replace these guys. Now hopefully you get an idea of what's going on inside there. Again, this was a freaking mystery to me when I was growing up, and I never messed with this stuff. I let the bike shop do that until I figured it out, or had someone help me figure it out.
Right.
So here's our spacers. Whoever cut it before obviously did a good job, because everything fits real well when we're, whoops.
I was going to say, Brandon, you kind of...
Let's try bearings first.
Yeah.
How about that?
You know what else you guys can try? Is hitting the like, subscribe, and the bell notification icon, huh?
Because
it helps out the video, and it helps out the channel, and you guys get to see Brandon do more things twice.
So the bearings are in there, seals. Actually, if we had more time, this would be an excellent opportunity to just clean those out and repack them, but we're not going to do it this time.
Nope.
Here's my threaded race going on. I'm going to leave this threaded race on just snug so that everything holds together. At this point now, I don't have to hold the fork in, because now that threaded race is keeping everything together just fine. My spacers are next. Something, it can never go smoothly, huh?
It just did. You just had that one on there.
There it is. Jesus. And then it's time for our lock nut now.
Right.
And it's also not a bad idea if you're going ahead and grease all those things up. Also, just a light layer of grease on the threads here.
Yeah.
So now it comes to our adjustment. And really, I feel like the best way to do this is with the handlebar intact, the wheel intact, all that. But you won't be able to see it as well if I do it that way. So we're kind of just going to give you the basics of this here using the tools that we had set aside already. Now, this is one of those things in biking that was kind of a rewarding fix and a rewarding adjustment back when this is all we had, because this is actually kind of something that takes a little bit of finesse, it takes a little bit of experience, and definitely takes a lot of practice if you're doing this for the first time. What we want to do, our main goal is to have this feel as loose and light as possible, but still tight. Now the trick to this is, with this threaded nut on there and the lock nut, every time you want to tighten them, we're actually decreasing the distance on the bearing. So you want to adjust the threaded nut to where we feel like we're going to be, again, have a nice light feel on the bearing. I'm a little bit tight right there, I can feel it. And again, this is what takes kind of like some practice and some experience to feel how you want to adjust it. So that feels good, it's nice and quiet. And now I'm going to tighten down that lock nut. So here's the potential for things to go wrong and to be frustrating. What I want to do, now that I have the tension on those bearings set to where I want them, you don't want to move that threaded locker, or that threaded race on there at all. You want to hold that perfectly still and then just tighten the top nut. Things are moving around a little bit because they're not assembled. But if you hold that threaded race still and tighten that lock nut, now is the time where you just have a little bit of trial and error. Now I'm going to put this thing back in the stand, put the wheel on. I'm going to feel if this has a nice light action, like it does right now, feels good. And then also that it's tight both laterally on the bike. Putting this guy back on. Again, in other circumstances, if I was being more thorough, I would make sure this was all clean and threaded, or excuse me, greased. And then with these guys, go ahead and go ham on this bolt. This is a big steel bolt. You can really put some weight behind it, and it's kind of a safety issue too. You don't want this coming loose. So when I reinstall these, I'm really going to get after it and put my back into it.
What? You mean there's no torque spec for that, Brandon?
No, we're going ham. So that's kind of the general idea of it. Now, again, it's going to take a couple tries. It's going to take a couple practices to get that feel correct for you. The main thing is we don't want any play in this headset when you're done. It can be a little bit on the tight side. That's not the worst thing. Being on a loose side is the worst thing. You do not want that.
All right.
So I think that's about it for the threaded. Hopefully that was a good explanation and kind of get an idea. Again, practice, practice, practice. It takes feel, it takes time, it takes experience.
Absolutely. All right, let's get after the unthreaded one.
All right, need to clap or what?
I'm just gonna hit stop, but you can transition out. Go clap. Yeah, there we go.
Transition.
All right, guys. So now we're back. You saw how Brandon took care of a threaded headset adjustment.
Yes.
Now we are doing a non-threaded headset adjustment.
So this one is on a Marlin 5, and I actually did loosen this up a little bit so we can exaggerate and for demonstration purposes of what we're going to look for in these. And you can do this also on the threaded one as well. Again, I was talking in a moment ago about holding onto that front brake caliper and then giving a little back and forth. Here you can actually see I got stuff moving around. Hopefully you can see that. And if you're riding, you would absolutely hear this and feel this in the ride.
Right.
My other kind of go-to diagnosis also, I can move these spacers around. These spacers are not tight enough and they move around inside the headset. So like we did before, let's go take this apart, take a look inside, kind of show you what's going on inside there. It is different than the threaded for sure. It's a better one. This is our current technology as far as headsets is concerned. This hasn't changed in quite some time. I don't think it needs changing at this point, but someone's always going to find something to do. So on this one, if you remember the bolt on that quill stem, this is just a top cap. I have a top cap, I have a spacer, and there's my stem. The stem now is held together with these pinch bolts on here. These pinch bolts are 4mm aluminum bolts, so I am going to use a torque wrench on this guy. Sometimes you'll see a 5mm, sometimes a 6mm, very rarely steel bolt, in which case then you're just going to go, once again, we're going to go ham on those things. Now that I've kind of loosened the pinch bolts up, you'll see that the stem will just easily pop off right there. No quill, as you saw in the last one. This just threads onto the non-threaded steer tube. And then the rest is kind of similar. We don't have those other threaded parts, but we do have this top cap in here where the bearing rests inside. There's my bearing, there's my retainer. And then we're going to show you what's keeping it all together. It's really just that top cap. An important part of this whole thing is if you look inside there, there's my Starfangle nut inside there. That's pressed in there.
Starfangle.
So that thing is, yep. So that thing is pressed in there and it works against pressure against the steer tube.
Right.
If you had a carbon steer tube, you cannot use these guys in there. You have to use a carbon specific plug that goes in there to protect the carbon. So I'm going to make sure everything's seated up inside here. Put my spacers back. Put my stem back. Put my other top spacer back. And you'll notice in here, there has to be a gap between your last spacer or your stem and the top cap, because then it won't cinch down, it won't hold everything together, it'll bottom out on itself. So here you'll see about 2 or 3 millimeters of gap between the steer tube and either the stem or the spacer. Top cap's on, everything's loose. So now again, these don't quite require quite as much as finesse, in my opinion, as the threaded ones do. I can go test the tightness here. I'm not going to go to full torque on this guy. A couple things I'm going to look at. Okay, my my spacers are now tight, and I have no more play in that head tube. So I'm ready to tighten everything else up now. Yeah, this is going to be where all the adjustment's going to be, is in the top cap. By tightening it down, I'm going to have more pressure on the bearing, and then the steering is going to be tighter. By loosening it up, obviously things are going to get loose and sloppy, and you don't want that. So a little bit of a balancing act, a little bit of fine-tuning required when we're adjusting the top cap. Now that the feels where I want, it's tight, and it's also pretty light in the feel of the steering. I'm going to use my torque wrench on the pinch bolts. Again, these 4 millimeter aluminum bolts will require that torque spec on there. This one is a 5.2 Newton meter. That way we're going to be safe. We're going to protect the parts. Test it again. Play is out of there. The steering feels nice and light. I can manipulate it just with a couple fingers, and my spacers don't spin around. I feel satisfied with that adjustment, and that's how you do that.
Awesome. All right, Brandon, clap. Give us a transition. Get us out of here. Let's close this one out.
I got stuff in my hand.
There you go. Hey. Okay, so before we close out, Brandon wants to...
I forgot to say something.
Yep.
So you cannot do any adjustments to the top cap without first loosening your pinch bolts. Tightening the pinch bolts, ensure they're tight, but the pinch bolts are the last thing you do in all these adjustments.
Okay.
If you go messing with this top cap, nothing's going to happen, because that stem's going to be pinched onto the stem.
Right.
So, all right, said my piece.
Okay, said his piece. So, my friends, there you have it. We have gone over how to adjust a non-threaded headset and a threaded headset, which is becoming more and more rare to see these days, but you might come across it. And you guys had a brief introduction to Amanda, Miss Amanda, who is a project bike, and we'll definitely talk about that probably once we get some parts together, maybe beginning of March, mid-March, after the mountain biking festival. We'll kind of reveal the grand scheme on that. I think it's going to be pretty cool myself. So,
all right.
Yeah, Brandon's excited about it.
A little chip foose rendering.
Although he did crush my dream earlier this morning, I will say that. But we've got a plan to get around that. So he's a dream killer. No, not at all. I'm the dream killer. So, all right. On that note, my friends, seriously, like, subscribe, bell notification icon. Why? It helps out the video. It helps out the channel. And we need all the help we can get. There's going to be some links down below. Trek Bicycle Stores of West Phoenix is the most important one. Click that link, follow that link, contact Brandon or one of his amazing team if you have any questions on what you've seen today, what you've seen in a prior video, or you can just comment down below. Eventually, we do get to all comments. Thank you very much. Just keep them civil, okay? That's the only request. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, the devil's work, that social media, we need it. Follow us, show us some love down there. Keep up on the day-to-day events, or the affairs, I should say, of Get Out Arizona. Affairs, current affair. Was that? No, that was with Maury Povich. That was just the Maury Povich show. Anyways, I digress. The other links down below are going to be affiliate links, which means if you purchase something, we make a small commission. You don't get charged anything extra, and it's an easy way to help out the channel with park pass money, gas money, and coffee money, the other trifecta we love so much. So on that note, what do we always say? Be kind to yourself and others. I almost screwed that up, dude. You know, guys, for most of you know who've been following for a while, I work at the camera shop part-time. You guys know this. And I've got the saying, the closing, just like I do for Get Out Arizona. So, but in this case, we're definitely Get Out Arizona, and it is be kind to yourself and others. Seriously, my friends. Be amazing stewards out on that trail. We want to lead by example always. And I have to ask, What are you waiting for?
Go to Arizona.
Oh, the Scandinavian death metal version. We'll see you on that next adventure. Take care, everybody. Brandon, we'll see you next week.
All right, stay warm.